Hi, Game Master Brian, and welcome to the video, How to Play Hard and Win Big at Lingua Galaxiae. Now, as we move through all the parts of the game and learn how everything functions, keep this in mind. This is an awful lot like an athletic sport. It's the same thing you've heard time and time again. You only get out what you put in. If you don't push hard into this game, you're only going to get a small bit of what it has to offer. So it's really up to you. All right, let's take a look around the game. Let's start with the site map of the game. Now you notice my game room is center, and everything revolves around my game room. At the top, Gamer Commons, Game Code, and Game Glossary. These are three elements of the game that are open to all players at all times without any form of restriction. The elements below my game room, my production room, my points, my profile, my portfolio, other player portfolios, that's something that is unique to you. And in order to access the pages below my game room, you actually have to go to my game room first, and then from my game room you can access these bottom five pages. So there it is. Let's jump in and take a look at the game itself. Okay, here we are in Player Commons, and we know we're here because the radio button at the top is green, whereas all the others are blue. Let's take a look at this page starting in the upper right-hand corner. Statistics corner is exactly as it sounds. These are real-time numbers relating to the game. Below that is General Announcements. If I want to make an announcement to all players, regardless of what step they're on, that announcement will be made here. Every time you log in, you're going to be initially brought to this page, so you'll want to review General Announcements each time that you check in. Below that is Time Travel in the News. These are hyperlinks to outside news stories dealing with discoveries relating to issues of time and space. Now, why are we talking about time and space? Because the underlying theme of this game deals with time travel. Why? Because the originators of the game is an organization called the Coalition of Universal Time Traveling Societies. Now, we don't talk about them directly in the game, but if you want to know more about them, you can go to their Facebook page. And here it is, facebook.com/cuts2040. Now, the 2040 relates to the year time travel will be discovered here on Earth. And in keeping with that, in the bottom right-hand corner is Countdown to Earth Time Travel. So in 25 years, so many months, days, hours, minutes, and seconds, we humans will figure out how to manipulate time and space. Now, sandwiched in between these two sections is the radio button Game Tutorials. The only way that you found this video was to hit that button, so you're already familiar with it. Remember, there's all kinds of videos over at Game Tutorials, so you want to check it out every so often. When a new item is added, it will be announced in General Announcements. Let's take a look at the bottom left-hand corner, the Gamer Store. This is swag that you can buy with the logo of the game on it. You need a credit card in order to make that purchase. Above that is the chat room. Now, I'm the only one in the game right now, so if you ever see AK, he is the ghost in the machine, and you know that's the Game Master sneaking around. Real simple. You want to jump into the chat room and make a comment or ask a question, you just hit this button down here. Dialog box comes in, you type it up and hit the send button. Above that is who is playing now. Now this will be populated once the game gets going. So we'll have 30 or so players, and it will tell you who's playing and what step they're on. So this will be fully populated. No matter what step you're on, you'll show up in this area. Okay, that's Player Commons. Now let's take a look at Game Code. So here we are in Game Code. We know we're here because the top button is green. And these are all of the rules that are part of the game. Now, the way the rules work is rule number 1 is the first rule out. So these are all in chronological order. And you can see how that plays out. At the very end of each rule is a number. That tells you what step this particular rule was first discussed. Now let's take a look at this item here. This is an icon at the end of one of the rules. When you see an icon, that tells you that at some point during the game, a game player has successfully changed a rule. And we're going to get more into that rule, into the change issue in a moment. But for right now, let's take a look at what it looks like once a change has been successful. What this dialog box tells us is that there's been one change so far in the game. The rule initially appeared as number 1, and then it was changed one time, which is number 2. So originally the rule, this rule read, "The essence of knowledge is worrying about what other people think." And it's a quote from Gladys Kravitz. Well, and a very astute player came along and said, you know what, there's a whole bunch wrong with that. I think a much better thing to say would be to quote Plato. And this person argued that the essence of knowledge is self-knowledge is a much better rule. That rule was made on this date, this is the person that did it, and this is the argument in favor of the change. Now again, you just can't go around changing things by yourself. You have to go through a process, and you have to get your change approved. But we'll talk more about that later on. Okay, so as you go down, and you're down further on down, the bottom right-hand corner, an arrow appears, and that'll pop you back up to the top again. If you want to search anywhere in the game codes, you can do a search doing this in this box here. This will bring up all examples. Let's say I want to look for the word change. This tells us every place in the game in between the codes and the glossaries where the word change appears. And you can see it's a lot, right? Okay. Now, let's jump over to Game Glossary. Now, unlike codes, Game Glossary is not chronological, it's alphabetical. Makes it easier to search. So here we're starting with A, the very first one is abstract. And as you can see across the top here are different letters. So if the word you're looking for starts with the letter M, as in Mike, it'll take you right down to the M's. And again, just like with codes, in the bottom right-hand corner, pops you back up to the top. And again, you can search for the glossary like we just did in codes. Okay, good. Now, we've handled the commons, we've handled game code, and we've handled game glossary. Now, let's take a look at the focus of the game, which is my game room. Okay, so here we are in my game room. And again, we know we're here because the button at the top is green rather than blue. And let's start in the upper right-hand corner. Now, this particular player, AK, has completed steps 1 through 3 and is currently working on step 4. We can go back to 3, 2, and 1 because those are completed steps. We don't have access to the steps that are to come because we haven't finished 4 yet. As soon as we finish the essay on step 4, and I'll show you about that in a moment, we'll be given access to step 5. Okay, and remember, so here's the drop down. You can go to past steps, and we're going to go back up to 4. Okay, so in step 4, here is the name of the step, and here's a short description of the step. Below that are glossary terms that are announced in this step, and below that are codes that are announced in this step. Further down are images that are used in this step, and below that are PowerPoints and PDFs and those types of related files that relate to the issues in step 4. Now going over to the bottom left-hand corner, this is how we access the subordinate pages to my game room, and we'll review those in a moment. Up here, above that, is step web links. These are hyperlinks to issues relating to step 4. This is who is playing now. Now remember, we're in step 4, so the only individuals that will be appearing here are other players who are currently logged in to step 4. Above that is the step 4 chat room. Pretty simple. Put your message in there, hit the send button, and you're off. Okay, now let's take a look at the center of the most important part of this page, which is the video. Pretty straightforward in terms of starting it. You hit the start button, and it starts. And If at any time during the video, maybe there's a graphic, or maybe there's a talking, maybe I say something that's important, and it sort of clicks in your mind, you can go ahead and hit the screen. And maybe it has something to do with change. So you can bookmark it. Now you can always come back no matter what step you are in the game. You can always come back to step 4 and you'll know that this bookmark will be here waiting for you. Now look how you can use the bookmarks. Let's say step 4 is going along and Game Master Brian says something like, now do you remember what we said back in step 1? And then I'll refer to something in step 1 and you're sort of scratching your head because by now maybe we're on step 47 and you're thinking to yourself, boy, I really don't remember what he's talking about in step 4. Well, what you do is you use the bookmarks. And if it's a reference to something in step 1, you put something like step 1 in or whatever works for you. Now you have a bookmark for step 1 that allows you, the video's not moving at this point, that allows you to calmly go back to step 1. Now maybe it's one of the PDF outline, or there's a web link, or one of the bookmarks, or maybe you just want to watch the video all over again. You can do whatever you want to here until you're up to speed in terms of the reference that was made at a later step. And once you've handled that, once you're now confident with that idea, you can go back to where you were, and you know this is where you were. You were on, this is where the point in time where you stopped. You hit that, and you're back in action again. You're watching the video right where you left off. Now below here, once you've finished the video, once you've finished watching the video, now it's time to compose your essay. So to keep this in mind, every step has an essay, and it happens here. This is the only place that you can start the essay for a step. So you hit the compose essay, and up it pops. Now what I've done is I've already started typing in here. And what I've done is I've satisfied the maximum and minimum word count that's been set up. Now right now the minimum word count is 75. When play starts, I'm probably going to bump that down a little bit. And once you've finished doing your writing, once you've written more than the minimum number of words, not to exceed 650, and you're comfortable with your essay, you think it's all pretty much done. In this, I've already saved this essay. But saving the essay doesn't get you to the next step. In order to get to the next step, you have to send this essay to the editor. And you do that by hitting this button here. Once you send the essay to the editor, this blue oval will now become white, and this to editor oval will now become blue. It's your timeline. It shows you where your particular job is on the timeline of where it has to go. We're going to see more about this in a minute, but just be very clear. Every essay has a timeline. It's either in the process of being completed, or it might be in final draft. Okay, so we've now taken a look at at my game room. Let's assume that we've already sent this step to the game master. Let's take a look in my production room. This is where all your work is organized. It's also the place where change orders are instigated. So let's talk about the organization first, and then we'll talk about change orders. Okay. Now, this character, AK, the Ghost in the Machine, has already completed steps 1, 2, and 3, or right here, right now in the steps area, and he's working on step 4. Why do we know that? Because step 4 is listed as first draft. If it had been sent along to the editor, it would say to editor, like here. Step 2 has been to the editor. It's now back as a second draft. So our player still needs to get in there and do some work so that the essay can reach its final destination, which is final draft. Once it's in final draft, you know that that essay has been completed. So this is the area you're going to come to see where all your projects are and how they're doing in terms of moving along. Ideally, what you want to see is a screen where everything is in final draft except for maybe 2 essays. You don't want to get behind where you've got a bunch of essays that are still in progress. You want to stay up with the game. Okay, so if something's in first draft, I can open it up. You do it over here with the blue eyeglass icon. You hit on it, and this brings it up. Now again, notice my timeline's here at the bottom. I've not yet sent this to the editor, which is why the oval first draft is highlighted. Let's go back and take a look at some of the others. This final draft, step 1, once a step has been completed, you'll notice it says final draft is over here. That means this has been done. There's nothing more to do here. So again, you're going to want to have the status column final draft on all but maybe 1 or 2 of your game essays, step essays. And there'll be a scroll bar over here once this area starts to get filled up. And you're every so often going to want to go through that and double check. Make sure your essay all your essays have reached the destination of final draft. You're in charge of this. No one's going to push you along. You have to handle this yourself. Okay. Now, in addition to writing a step for each essay, there's also the final portfolio or final project. This is where, if you're getting academic credit at school for this is the element that's going to be judged by your teachers to see whether or not you actually made an effort and put enough work into it to justify giving you credit. So it's an important thing here if you're working for credit. And this is also your public statement, because once this final project is completed, it'll be put out on the web for everyone to see. Okay, so we're going to learn more about this in a moment, but keep this in mind. If you write an essay that you think is really important, really just stuck in your brain, you really like it for some reason, you can bring it over here and put it in the final project. And you see, I've already done that. I took my final project here and I just dragged it over. Now, there's still 2 copies here. The original will stay here, and it's just making a copy over here. Now remember, there's like 80 different steps. So when you start getting to step 30 or 35 or so on, it's going to get confusing. You're not going to be able to remember stuff about what happened in the past. So this is a way to help you organize. Your final project is going to be based off of the essays you've already written. So when you get done with the game, you might have 20 or 30 of the 80 steps over here. Okay, why is this important? Chain order we're going to come back to in a second, because it has to do with the final goal of my portfolio. This is where you build your portfolio. And look what we have at the bottom of the page. This dialogue section where you put all your steps that you felt were important. They're all here waiting for you, and you can use these texts to help you build your final portfolio. So, for instance, let's say we open up step 1 and we really like this paragraph. So we're going to copy that. I'm going to come back here and we're going to put that here. Not only are you going to put text in here, but as you can see from up here, you can put pretty much whatever you want to. You make this multimedia. Have fun, make it interesting and as active as possible. But the core of your final project is based on the writings that you've already done. Okay, so once you've saved this, it becomes part of your portfolio. When you feel that you've finished your introduction, there's 4 tabs up here, 4 different parts of this final portfolio. When you feel that you've finished your introduction, send it to the editor. And the game master will either send it back with few comments, or they'll say, you know what, you need to work on this, this, and this, and you'll want to send it back to the editor again and again and again until you both feel that it's spot on perfect. Because remember, this is being put out for public viewing. You don't want this thing to be, you don't want to stumble through it. You don't want to have stupid mistakes. You're flawless and look good. Not only is the public going to look at it, But if you're on your way to college, you can use this for your college applications. You put the web address, which happens up here. You can use that in your college application. So you want this thing to be flawless. And the way you get to flawless is by going back and forth again and again with the Game Master. Okay. Now let's go back to my production room. And let's talk a little bit about change orders. This is where you score the biggest points in the game. You get points for completing a step. Well, everyone gets those points, right? But if you really want to stand out, you have to do a change order. So what does that mean? Anytime you see anything in the game that you think could be changed, file a change order. It could be a little thing. It can be a big thing. Maybe you think that there's room to change a rule or a glossary term, a code or a glossary term. That's where this happens, in the change order section. Maybe you think that there's a list and there's 5 elements to the list, and you think that the game is missing something and that there's another element to be added. There should be 6 items in that list. That's where you do it with change orders. Maybe you think one of those elements in the list doesn't belong there. It shouldn't be 5, it should be 4. That's where a change order happens. Use your imagination. What we're doing here is we're building the game, making it stronger and better, using the brain power of players. This really puts it in the ball in your court in terms of producing a better product. The players are in a large way really driving the game. And that's really different than a lot of what goes on in your classroom. You've got a textbook, your teacher tells you what's true, you got a test on Friday. Well, that's not what's happening here. This really puts the player in the driver's seat, but you got to have your act together. Your argument has to be solid and good. So this is the way the interaction with the game player works. The game player sends a change order to the game master. Game master looks at it. I'm going to make a decision. Either I think the change order has potential, has promise, or I think you're barking up the wrong tree. And if I think that you're really going in the wrong direction, I'll just come back and say, you know what? I don't think you have anything of substance here. And I'll talk to you about that. We can have a conversation about that. I'm not going to shut you down. But I'm also not going to allow the change order to progress. However, if I do think that there is the potential of a change order, a successful change order, I'll tell you. And I'll say, you know what? I think you've really got something here, but we need to improve it. And so that back and forth will happen until I think the change order is in good, strong shape, and then I'll approve it, and it will go into the game as a permanent element. Okay, remember, change orders is how you score big points. Now, speaking of points, look in the bottom left here. Let's take a look at that. This is where all your points are. So there are 5 different categories, and it gives you a running total here. If you think you deserve points that aren't showing up, you need to talk to the Game Master about it. And the way you talk directly to the Game Master is through the game-wide chat room. And this is how that works. Initiate a chat, and this tells you who you want to talk with. Well, these are currently all of the players that are signed up. I'm AK, so I can't have a conversation with myself, but I can certainly have a conversation with the Game Master. And I want to give a title to the chat, and then put my comments down there, and I send it. Game Master is going to get it. He or she's going to look at it, and they're going to come back to you. And that conversation can continue back and forth. If you want to talk to another player in private, you could do it here. You want to talk to the Game Master in private, you do it here. All happens on your My Points page. Okay, so we've already been to the production room, now bottom left-hand corner. We've been to the production room. Let's go take a look at my profile. Now, you've already seen this page because you saw this when you signed up. And this has all your information in it. Whatever image you want to use, whether it's a picture of your face or a graphic. There's also the opportunity here to recruit another player. So let's say that you're at school and you've got a friend who might be interested. You want to put the friend's name here, your friend's email address, and hit the update button. That will send this information to the Game Master, and I'll send an email to your friend and invite them to play. If you ever want to change anything about your profile, this is where it happens. So you change your password up here in the upper right-hand corner, and change anything about who you are down here. Okay, now we've looked at all the points, my portfolio, and this is the section, the other players' portfolio. This simply, it's blank right now because there aren't any. But if other players have finished their portfolio before you, you'll have an opportunity to take a look at them, possibly be inspired. Okay, it just says no portfolio is active yet here. Okay, folks, there it is. That's the game. So keep a couple of things in mind. The name of the game is Changes. Be looking for reasons to change the game. Either it's something that that needs to be improved, something needs to be added. However you think is the best to go, change orders is where it's at. And so there ends our tour of the game. All right, there it is, and time to start step 1. Good luck, and I look forward to you playing Lingua Galaxiae.